Inner Peace, Better Health with Saima, where inner truth meets transformational healing. Joining us today is the Kelly Keefe, author, speaker, Reiki Master, and the founder of the Heart Space. Through a powerful blend of energetic healing and soul storytelling, Kelly helps people rise above fear and embody who they were born to be. In a world that often tells us to silence our pain, Kelly shows us how to ride through it, not just heal, but ignite. So, if your soul has a story to tell, this one's for you. So, Kaylee, you say storytelling is a gateway to healing. So, what was your own first experience of writing as a form of transformation?
Yeah. As a child, I wrote my first chapter book in third grade, which here in the States, that'd be about 8 years old, and then again in middle school. And so I always had this vivid, vast imagination, and I found it as a great outlet for me to be able to process what was happening in my world, where I grew up in a lot of adversity and a lot of trauma and a lot of challenge. And it allowed me to begin to write this new world and tap into another place. I began to really utilize transformational writing for others in the book Rise Above Fear and learning, taking years of trainings and insights through different trainings I've gone to, as well as working with different clients. I began to see putting it together in one piece of work was supporting others, but also it drastically changed me. It allowed me to, it was an alchemical process of bringing all this information up and through me and getting to lifetime work through the different materials and the lessons that were coming up that are taught within that book as well.
Mm-hmm. So, what shifted in you when you finally put your truth onto paper?
Mm. It's funny where if you read the foreword of Rise Above Fear, I say in there that I got to go through the full process that that book teaches of rising above my own fear. As I said, I had been writing since I was a child, and I always knew there was a deep call within my heart. And a big part of what I'm here to do this lifetime is to support others through the written word and through the spoken word. However, I still have my own fears that I was coming up against, fear of rejection, fear of too much attention. So oftentimes we think it's a fear of success. I'm sorry, fear of failure that we have, but really it could be a fear of success that's more common within us that we don't realize. It wasn't until I really allowed my sole purpose and that calling of my heart to supersede the fears and learn how to not try to slay the fear and try to destroy it and push it away, but rather of how to befriend it, how to learn who it is and where is it coming from and what it truly needs. And being able to move through that process together, it allowed me to put down those guards and those barriers of protection that that fear was trying to give. And remember that it's safe. It's safe to express myself and it's safe to put myself out there and to share the work that God had placed on my heart to move through the world.
That moment, when the pen becomes a mirror, it's so deeply sacred. It's where healing truly begins.
It really is. It's when we can remember, okay, it's just an aspect. It's not truth. It's not reality. It's its own perspective of what's there, and that we all have a deep call within our heart, most of us several different calls. And if we so choose, begin to shift the narrative, not just storytelling in the books, but the narratives and stories that start within our own being, we can then begin to supersede and be able to share our story in the world in whatever way that is for you, for sure.
Absolutely. So, how does writing help people move through fear, especially when they're scared to even look at their past?
Yeah. I think that there's different levels and there's always the dance of meeting ourselves where we're at. If you're listening to this today and you've never done inner work, you've never worked with a professional to go into those things that maybe still feel suppressed or hidden in the closet, I wouldn't say the route isn't just start writing on those experiences that you haven't touched in a while and go all in. We actually want to be very careful and loving with ourselves, and probably something to look at with a professional that can support. But starting with something light of a daily journal, writing down things of what am I experiencing? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And if that's a challenging area, which can be challenging, I'm someone who writes every day. And even sometimes there's a day where I can feel a resistance to sitting down and clearly articulating my thoughts. And so, a practice that I love to suggest to others is a free writing practice where for 10 minutes you set a timer and then you grab a pen and a piece of paper and you just begin writing. And the pen does not leave the paper until the alarm goes off. Even if you find yourself writing, I don't know what to write anymore. Oh my God, when is this alarm going to go off? I can't, but, and you just keep writing. Something really interesting will happen eventually where you shift out of so much of the conscious thinking mind where the stream of consciousness begins to kick in, that begins to provide a lot more insight to maybe some deeper layers of what you're thinking and feeling and processing in your life, or new ideas and downloads and things of that nature. So, those are some ways that I really like to look at small ways to begin to bring writing into your world if that's a new idea and concept for you.
That's the medicine, tiny steps, honest words, and the courage to keep the pen moving.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So, for someone who feels locked or frozen, what's the gentlest way to start?
Yeah, kind of as I just said, being gentle with ourselves and meeting ourselves where we're at. Something where if we find ourselves ever in a time where fear's really kicking up and we're feeling a lot of resistance towards something, that's never anything that we need to say there's something wrong with us and that we have to try to push through. We can think of those moments with like a little child, because that's essentially what it is. It's a part of ourselves that is feeling some level of fear. It feels unheard, unseen, unsafe, whatever it is. And the interesting thing about it is if we try to just kind of keep pushing it away, and pushing it away, it actually is going to have a worse reaction within our day-to-day lives, because we can think of it as like a little one, if they want someone's attention and they say, "Hey, hey, hey, hey," and you're just like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I'm talking, go do the thing." And then they start pulling on the shirt. "No, I really want your attention. No, go do the things." And then they're left to their own and ignored and unheard. So next thing you know, they find a crown and they start drawing on the walls. And then next thing you know, you come into a room and they've drawn all over the furniture and the walls. The same thing of these different parts of ourselves. If we continue to try to just pretend they're not there, ignore them, or shame them for existing, they're just going to actually create more havoc for us in our day to day life. So rather, we can begin to say, okay, this is a little child inside and asking, how would I talk to an upset child right now? What tone would I give them? Would I scold them? Would I yell at them? Would I shame them? No. We'd probably be far more understanding and patient with their emotions, try to support them in explaining what they're feeling so we could be of support to them. So we can begin to change how we look at ourselves in those tender moments of those fears coming up and be able to start to explore more of who is this inside and what is it they're truly needing, and meet them with a nourishing dynamic rather than an aggressor and a dominating energy.
That completely makes sense, Kelly. Now, you created the writer within a journey to help people tell the story the soul came to share. So, can you share the patterns you notice in people who finally let their voice rise?
Yeah. I think it's so beautiful to see. I believe in soul curriculums that we all come here, and we have our different soul lessons that we're here to learn. I believe we have our own personal soul lesson, and Kelly Keefe has her curriculum for her soul, and then I also have my soul mission. And those are the things I'm here to bring to the world. I find a lot of people who a part of their soul mission or their soul lesson is to really step into their full authentic expression and leadership also comes with the soul mission of their voice to be heard because they have important messages to share with the world to inspire them and to activate others into their healing path or into their leadership and full expression. So oftentimes this comes with a level of oppression that was felt at some point in the journey. Maybe it was challenging in childhood, weren't able to fully express themselves or heard no often to the things that they wanted to do. We also see this a lot in the different feelings of a fear of being seen and heard, maybe showing up in environments growing up or relationships or however it showed up in your life. But this sense of not being safe to be able to be fully seen and heard. And we get to overcome that piece through so many of the beautiful teachings we have through somatic practicing, through low risk writing, through low risk containers where it's a safe space to be seen and to be heard and to really begin to embrace authentic expression as it's a journey of empowerment. And that's so much of both the soul mission and the soul curriculum for those who feel that in their heart is to really fully step into that empowered state to be an exemplar for other people along the journey.
Ah, that's noteworthy, Kelly. So, can you share one breakthrough moment from your community that still gives a chill?
Ooh, there was a moment I was at a book launch, February 1st of this year. And there was another woman sharing one of her books, and she was a young widow, and she wrote a book about her experience. And I watched her go up and her talk about it, and it was very moving because, of course, that's a very challenging experience for anyone to experience, let alone her write about it and relive it for the world to be able to be a part of. And I was inspired by hers because I love fellow writers and the vulnerability that comes with that. And after, everyone was mixing and mingling and, doing the whole thing, and I looked over, and there was a group of probably 6 or 7 additional women with this author sitting there, and there was this shared level of grief and connection and support that was at play of these different women who resonated with her story and her experience, that they were able to come together and create community and support in that space that wouldn't have been there if the author didn't have that level of courage to share her story with the world and bring them all together and bring forward more healing. It was seeing that from an outside perspective rather than when it happens to me, being able to see it from a lens of an observer, then be able to go to the author and say, you realize what just happened, right? Like that was life-changing experience for everyone there involved. And that for me, I think about often of the impact of sharing our story and how that touches other people's lives and brings people together.
That kind of liberation is contagious, you know? It
Yes, for
gives
sure.
others permission to speak too, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, in your work with energy healing and coaching, how does writing fit into a deeper spiritual or energetic?
Sure. This was something where it took me a little bit of time to let it fully land and click of, oh yeah, these all go together. Because I was in my own experience and soul growth of seeing like there's not a doubt in my heart. I'm here in the healing arts and I've been with the heart space open in 2016. I had already been deep on my path and studying and practicing for 5 years prior to that. And so knew that was a part of it. I knew writing was always a part of it and the coaching. But in some ways, I was still keeping them a little bit in my own head, a little bit more as their own identities. But it was then really allowing them all to come into my heart and realize all of these bring healing. All of these are different routes to the same thing. supporting people and coming home to their most authentic self and supporting them in their rising. I really like to look at this visual for myself of how I see myself in the world, and it goes for everybody, but seeing it as like a diamond. And the different way that if I were to take a flashlight and I were to shine that onto the diamond and move it into different directions, if I put it this way, I might see red, and let's call that writing. And when move it this way, okay, cool, I get a purple. Let's say that's coaching. And if I move it this way, it's a green, and then let's say that's the healing component. Well, if we look at it, it's all still the same diamond. It's just different hues of whatever way the light is being reflected. And that's really how I look at how it all comes together. At the end of the day, it's all the same energy being brought through different expressions to meet people where they're at on their journey. There's some people who are like, I've been journaling my whole life and I know a book is in me and I want to bring it out, whether it's a fiction book or it's something that they want to bring because they're already a coach or a speaker. They want to bring their message or they want to write a memoir of their own for their own purposes. That is deeply healing work, as is receiving healing or stepping into learning Reiki. I've been a Reiki teacher for 7, 8 years now. You know, others going into that. We're doing more of the subconscious rewiring and neurolinguistic transformational coach. It's all the same thing, leading us into the next version of our being.
So, do you believe that, some wounds can only be processed through?
That's a really great question. I think they can happen simultaneously, and I say that through my own experience as someone who, again, has endured quite a bit of trauma in her life where, working with professionals, it's been said of, complex trauma and get to work with professionals and unpacking that through my journey. There's been plenty of times where something may come up that I didn't know was there, and it's through writing it out of what am I experiencing, what am I recalling, where am I feeling it, that it actually creates more space to be able to name what is there. Once we're able to name what is happening in our experience, it starts to diffuse the power that it has over us. And I find for me, I might not be able to immediately name what it is or be able to say, okay, cool, let me shake this out and let me somatically move this then to be able to write it. But sometimes it's the counter. Let me write, because that's again an avenue that feels really yummy and good for me. And I've been doing that since who knows how long. Let me just start to write and it can bring me clarity of, oh, this is what that triggered and this is where it's at. And okay, cool. Now that I have an understanding through my writing, now I can begin to go process it and move it and release it out of the body.
That fusion of body, energy, and expression is what makes your work so integrative and whole, Kaylee.
For sure. I have a free 5-day journey that I'm happy to gift to listeners here called The Writer Within. And it's a daily email, video, and practice that really supports us in beginning to ignite and be able to get clear of what is that authentic voice within. And each day, there's not just a writing prompt and a teaching, but there's also a somatic practice with it. So that way we can really bring the body fully into it and continue to remind the body that it's safe to express and to continue to create space for what wants to come through our writing to be able to come in.
That's surely going to be beneficial for all our listeners out there. Now, for someone listening who feels like the story is too messy, too raw or too much, what would you say to them?
Ah, our mess is our message. If I really, really, really believe that anything we go through, there's someone out there who can resonate in their own way. No one will ever experience the same things you've experienced. And no one will ever be able to feel the exact same things that you feel. But there are people out there who can resonate with your story and be able to find healing in that. I believe we all go through what we go through for some reason. And that doesn't mean that we deserve terrible things that happen to us by any means. But it does mean that our story is our experience in life is our testimony that really can support other people. So if we ever feel we're too much or too messy, I would say it's actually you've been set up for a really powerful testimony to be able to change a lot of lives through your story and what you were able to overcome and endure and who you became despite all of it.
And
Yeah.
what becomes possible, when they choose to share it anyway?
Oh, mountains move. I think it's such a beautiful space of when we become more magnetic because there's also a level of authenticity that we unleash into the world when we begin to share our story, where it allows people to really see us for who we are. Now, that does not mean that you have to go out there and begin to share with everybody in the world your deepest, darkest, challenging times and traumas and all day, every day. That's not what that means. But allowing yourself to begin to come home and own this is my story, this is my experience, and begin to articulate that and share that in whatever way is right. It may be writing a book, it may be writing it home for yourself, it may be sharing it in a tasteful way on social media. Insert your channel here, but it begins to add this new level of magnetism. And it allows those who are meant to find you in this world to be able to find you. I had an amazing call with another powerful woman. I guess it was a couple days ago, a few days ago. And used this and I loved it. She said, it's like a dolphin call. The more that we understand the free like, there's other if we're a dolphin, there's other dolphins out there who are wanting to find us, but we need to be sending out the right frequency, the right ping, in order for them to be able to find you. And so by us owning our story and beginning to share it, we can start to send out that sonar for the other dolphins to be able to find us.
That's the soul spark right there, that our story doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to be true, right?
Absolutely. 'Cause it's and that's something we talk about in Creator Within, where we can get so in our own way. There's sneaky blocks and excuses that we'll give ourselves to not sit down, to write, to be with ourselves, to let the creation flow through, whether it's writing something fiction and just creative writing for fun to see what comes through, or sitting and journaling for deep interpersonal work, whatever it is. We can find every excuse in the world to not sit and do it. But at the end of the day, whether you're writing something that your dream is to have it hit major bookstores later, or it's something that no one will ever see again, no one will ever see that first draft and raw material. So it does not need to be perfect. It just needs to get out onto the page.
Exactly. Kaylee, you just gifted us a reminder that healing doesn't always come in silence. It
Mm.
often comes to sound, story, and soulful expression. And for all our listeners, whether you're journeying through grief, writing a memoir, or simply finding the courage to say, this happened, your story matters. The world needs it. You need it. And it might just set someone else free too. Until next time, write bravely, live honestly, and keep seeking your inner peace.